Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Planetarium live stream. My name is Jessica. I am the director of the Planetarium, and with me tonight is one of my students who I will let introduce himself.
Hi there, my name's Eli. I'm a physics and astronomy undergraduate student at UMD.
So believe it or not, it is November, which means we are doing our traditional beginning of the month, What's Up, this month for November. So we'll take you through some of the things you can find in the night sky, and then after that we'll also touch on a couple of interesting astronomy current events that have come up over the past few weeks and are upcoming too. If you do have any questions throughout the show tonight, leave them down in the comments. Eli will be watching that for me and will let me know if any of those pop up. We'll try to get to them as soon as we see them. If we can't, we will take a time at the end as well to answer those questions. So with that, let me get all set up. All right. Why? Oh, I gotta pin myself so that it doesn't show you, Eli. There we go. Alrighty. So as I said, we are doing What's Up November edition, and we will be starting out with the moon. And so we're going to look at when the different phases of the moon are going to be up this month. Now, we did just have a full moon on Halloween, October 31st. So for November, our first big phase of the moon is going to be the third quarter, which happens on November 8th. About a week after that, on November 14th, we'll have our new moon. About a week after that, on November 21st, we have our first quarter moon. And then our full moon comes at the end of the month on November 30th. And the full moon for November is known as the beaver moon. Now, with our full moon this month, we do have a lunar eclipse coming up on November 30th. Now, before you get too terribly excited, this is what we call a penumbral lunar eclipse, which is the, frankly, most least exciting of all of the types of lunar eclipses. So, a lunar eclipse happens when the moon falls into the Earth's shadow. And so you can see that here, and the Earth shadow has two parts. We have the kind of darkest region, which we call the umbra. If you're in the Earth's umbral shadow, the sun is completely blocked by the Earth, so it's like the darkest shadow. And then we have the penumbra, which is the kind of partial shadow. So the sun is partially blocked, but not entirely, so you still get some sunlight. So a penumbral eclipse happens when the moon passes only through Earth's penumbra. And so we don't get a super darkened moon during a penumbral lunar eclipse. Here is a comparison during a past penumbral lunar eclipse. So you can see that the moon is going to appear a little bit dimmer. But quite honestly, if you don't know what's happening, you're probably not going to notice what's going on. Now, this is going to happen very early on the morning of November 30th, for us here in Duluth, the eclipse starting at about 1:32 a.m., which is when the moon is going to first enter the Earth's penumbra. Maximum, so when the most of the moon is in Earth's penumbra, the entire moon isn't going to be in it, but when the maximum amount of it is going to happen at about 3:42 a.m., and then the penumbral lunar eclipse will end at 5:53 a.m. That's when the moon will pass out of the penumbral shadow. So exciting, maybe. If you're going to be up, you may take a look and you may notice a little bit of a dimming. But as far as possible eclipses, maybe not the most exciting. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait until, I believe it's May 2021 before we see a decent lunar eclipse. I think we have a partial lunar eclipse coming up in May of next year. But this will be it for a while. All right, so moving past the moon, we do have all of the planets that we can see up in our sky at different times of the day and night. So we are going to start off with Jupiter and Saturn. So they have been with us throughout the summer, showing up in the south. Now that we're getting kind of into fall, they're up more in the southwest now at this time of year. But they are still very prominent, especially Jupiter, very easy to see. If you head out just as it's getting dark and look to your kind of south-southwest, that first really bright point that you're going to see is the planet Jupiter. Jupiter is brighter than all of the stars in the sky. So it's a very easy one to pick out. Saturn will be a little bit to its left. It's a bit fainter, looks more about the average brightness of a star. So it can be a little bit more difficult to pick out on your own if you don't know what you're looking for. So hopefully this is going to give you a little bit of a hand here. Now this configuration is specifically for November 19th, right at about 6 p.m. for us here in Duluth. And I picked this day because on this day you can see the moon is going to be very close by to Jupiter and Saturn. So our crescent moon is going to be right nearby. So if you can find the moon on November 19th, then you'll be able to find Jupiter and Saturn as well. All right, also up in our evening and nighttime sky is the planet Mars. So Mars just reached opposition, which is when it's directly opposite of the sun from the Earth. That's when it appears the biggest and brightest to us. That happened last month. And so now Mars is going to be getting a little bit dimmer, a little bit smaller over the next while. But it's still pretty prominent up there, and you can find it up in the kind of east-southeast. It's visible right at sunset. You can see here, again, this is for right about 6 p.m. And if you are having a little bit of trouble finding it, you can wait until towards the end of this month on November 25th, where, again, we see our moon is going to be really close by to the planet Mars. Since Mars is near opposition, it is very bright. It's another one to kind of easily pick out right now because it will be a bit brighter than the stars that are nearby it. You also may notice that it does have a red tint to it. You can see that red color from the planet Mars. Now, another interesting thing that's happening a little bit before the moon gets to where Mars is in the sky, back on November 15th, Mars is actually going to start moving in the opposite direction that it's currently moving. So Mars is right now in what we call a retrograde loop or a retrograde motion. And so that's when, over the course of night to night to night, the planets typically move eastward across the sky from night to night. But during a retrograde loop, it actually appears to move back to the west. And so what's actually happening here, and there was a lot of figuring this out for a couple thousand years, but what's happening here is during a retrograde loop, the planet Earth is actually catching up and passing that planet that's going through the retrograde loop. And so this happens because the planets orbit the sun at different speeds, with the planets closer to the sun going faster and the planets further from the sun going slower. So every so often, Earth will actually catch up and pass those slower moving outer planets. And that's what's been happening with us and Mars. As Mars has been at opposition, we have been catching up and passing it. And now that we have passed it, it's going to, while we were in the midst of passing it, is when it looked like it started going the opposite direction in our sky. And now that we've passed it, it's going to start going back the right way. And so here we can see that path just kind of plotted out on the stars. So this retrograde loop started back in September, where it was moving back the other direction. And now starting November 15th, it's going to turn back around and start going the way it originally was, because we have now caught up and passed Mars. All right. Now, also nearby, let me move my camera, there we go. Nearby Mars in the sky are two other planets, Uranus and Neptune. Now, unfortunately, these planets you cannot see with your naked eye. They are too small, too far away. But if you do have a decent, say, 4-inch telescope, you can see them through it. And this picture here is kind of showing what they might look like. You're going to see kind of a noticeable disk, not just a point of light. So a small disk that is a kind of bluish green color. And Neptune is also in the middle of a retrograde loop here that will end on November 28th. But you can see that its motion across the sky is a bit less dramatic because it's further away, it's moving slower, and so it doesn't appear to move as much from night to night. All right, the last of the planets that we have to talk about are Mercury and Venus. These two are up in the early morning sky, so before sunrise. Mercury on November 10th is actually going to be at greatest western elongation. What that means is Mercury has reached the furthest it will be from the sun before turning around and heading back the other way. So it's basically reached as far out in its orbit that it's going to get before it starts coming back around. And that's when it's the easiest to see. Because Mercury's orbit is so close to the sun, it is always really nearby it, which makes it difficult to see because the sun is really bright and Mercury is really small and dim. So the best time to see it is when it's at greatest elongation, when it's at its furthest from the sun. So as I said, that will happen on November 10th. And the best time to see it is to head out between 5:30 and 6:30 in the morning and look kind of east-southeast. And there you'll see Mercury pretty low in the sky, and then above it you'll see the very bright Venus, because Venus is also up in the early morning. Let's see. Yeah. And Venus is quite bright. It'll be a lot brighter than the other stars, than the stars nearby, whereas Mercury will be a little bit dimmer. All right, and that is our planets that are up this month. So we can see all of them up this month, just either at night or in the early morning. And for those two outer, Uranus and Neptune, you will need a telescope if you want to try and see those. Now, if you're interested in using this program that I have been using to show you where the planets will be in the sky, this is something called Stellarium. It's a free program. I have linked to it in the comments for this video. Free to download on your computer, and you can set it up for any date, time, and location, and it will show you what the sky looks like. And so it's a really good tool to help you learn the night sky and kind of learn where to look for things. If you're wanting something more that you can use while you're outside, there are also a lot of great, my phone disappeared, there we go, a lot of great apps that you can download as well that use your GPS, that you just hold up your phone, and based off of your phone's GPS, it's able to show you what you're looking at in real time. And so it's another useful tool there. All right. So also coming up in November are a couple of meteor showers. So meteor showers happen when the Earth passes through the debris trail left behind by a comet. So as a comet comes into the inner solar system and comes close to the sun, the heat from the sun starts to vaporize the ices that are the predominant, that make up most of the comet. Comet is mostly ice. And as those ices vaporize, they kind of can blow off little bits of dust and sand and stuff, and that dust and sand gets strewn behind the comet as it's moving through space and kind of leaves this trail of debris along its orbit. So each time the Earth passes through this debris trail, as those little grains pass through our atmosphere, they get heated up, which causes them to glow, and we see them as those streaks of light, or meteors, also known as shooting stars. So in the kind of beginning of the month, starting in a couple days on November 5th, the Southern Torrid meteor shower is going to peak. So the Southern Torrids have been going on for a little while. They started back in late September and will continue on through late November. The peak is happening, as I said, on November 5th. Best seen after midnight, so early dawn, when the constellation Taurus is high up in the sky, because that's where the meteors appear to originate from, are the constellation Taurus, which is why they're called the Taurids. Now, this isn't a particularly heavy meteor shower. Peaks look like they are about 10 meteors per hour. But the debris that is left in this trail, which we know comes from Comet Ankh, is a bit larger than your average comet debris. And because of that, the Taurids are known for producing very bright fireballs from the slightly larger debris that falls through our atmosphere. And you can see that the Taurids are actually kind of two separate showers. We have the northern Taurids and the southern Taurids. So the northern Taurids will actually peak a little bit later in the month on November 12th. Same thing, it's not going to be as bright or as active of a meteor shower. The northern Taurids look to be peaking at about 15 meteors per hour. But of the two, the northern Taurids might be your best bet, because during November 5th, there will be a bright waning gibbous moon up in the sky, which is going to make it harder to see those meteors. So the northern Taurids on November 12th will be a little bit easier to see because the moon won't be there by that point. And then on November 17th, we have the Leonids. So the Leonids are courtesy of Comet Tempel-Tuttle. They appear to originate from the constellation of Leo, hence Leonids, and they are a little bit more of an active shower. We're looking at peaking at about 20 meteors per hour. And this is, again, best seen when the constellation Leo is higher up in the sky, which for us is going to be very early morning, around what you can see here is about 4 a.m. So those are our meteor showers that are happening. Another interesting thing that you can see up this month, on November 23rd, we're going to have a very, very bright passage of the International Space Station that can be seen from here in Duluth, starting around 6:02 p.m. In the southwestern sky, and then it'll go across the sky almost directly overhead before fading from view around 6:06 p.m. And this is going to be incredibly bright. So this is a great time to try and go out and see it. You'll see it, again, starting to come to brightness in the southwest around 6:02, and you'll see this just bright, fast-moving, steady light go across the sky. That's one of the tricks for identifying a satellite versus a plane. If it's moving and blinking, it's a plane. If it's moving and not blinking, it's a satellite. Now, the ISS is going to be making quite a few passes over Duluth over the course of November. The one on November 23rd is one of the brighter passes, and also one that's going to be up for a longer period of time and going to be the most easily visible. But if you're interested in checking out any of the other passes that are happening, I have linked the website heavensabove.com in the comments. And using that, you can actually track all sorts of satellites and see when they could be visible from your location. All right, well, that is it for what we can see up in the sky. Let's now touch on a little bit of current events. So very exciting, coming up on November 14th is the launch of SpaceX Crew 1. So we had the very successful Crew demo launch it was over the summer, right, Eli? Am I losing my sense of time already?
I do not know off the top of my head, but I can verify really quick.
Okay. So that was the last kind of demo to test that everything was working. And now we're out of that demo phase and we have our first official SpaceX Crew Dragon, not demo, but real launch. You can see we have 4 astronauts that are going to be going up, 3 from NASA, 1 from JAXA, the Japanese space agency. And they will be launching on November 14th. Launch is currently scheduled for 6:49 p.m. Central Standard Time. And just like for the crew demo launch, NASA is going to be doing a full-fledged, a full live stream with all sorts of interesting people and interviews, all leading up to the launch of Crew 1. Now, our 4 astronauts here are heading to the International Space Station. If launch goes as scheduled, they should dock at the International Space Station by 3:20 a.m. on November 15th. And they are currently scheduled to stay at the ISS for about 180 days. So they won't be coming back to Earth until probably June 2021. So very exciting. We have our next launch from American soil, taking astronauts back up to the International Space Station. And we will...
Yep. Sorry, crew demo was the end of May.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
But we will share NASA's live stream on our social media pages in case you have trouble finding it. We'll get all of that shared. We're very excited about it. An announcement that came out not that long ago about our moon. The SOFIA telescope, which stands for the Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy. It's an infrared telescope that is on a plane that flies up high up in the atmosphere where it gets above the layer of water vapor that absorbs infrared light so that it can see infrared light coming from space. So the SOFIA team announced that they had found water on the moon. And a lot of people's immediate reaction was, well, yeah, we've known that, right? And yes, we have. We have known since the early 2000s that in some craters on the moon near the North and South Pole, where they are constantly in shadow, there is a layer of water ice there that exists because it stays in a shadow, and so it stays cold enough that it doesn't vaporize and escape. So we've known that there's been water ice there, but the significance of SOFIA's finding is it found water on the sunlit surface, which we haven't found before, and quite frankly, we didn't know if it was possible. Now, it's not, we don't want to get too terribly excited about this yet because the amount of water that they found was very small. They detected anywhere from 100 to 412 parts per million in concentration of water, which, to put that in something that may be a little bit easier to visualize, this is equivalent to taking a 12-ounce bottle of water and spreading it over about a 35 cubic feet of volume. So this is not a lot of water. In fact, the Sahara Desert has 100 times the concentration of water that we found on the moon. So it's quite sparse, but it's a new discovery that we didn't know was possible and helps lend us to maybe finding sources of water on the moon that could be used for a human base, because sending water up to the moon is very expensive. And so if we want to establish a base on the moon, the best thing for us would be to find a source of water there rather than having to send it up ourselves. So exciting, maybe not quite as sensationalized as the media put it out to be, but still very exciting finding. And the last bit of news that I want to touch on is the success of OSIRIS-REx. So it had its little grabby arm that touched down on asteroid Bennu and actually collected some samples of the asteroid. It collected at least 60 grams of material in its little grabby hand. That is in the process of being stowed away and then will be sent back to the Earth for us to study. And I found this really cool video that I just wanted to show. This is from one of the other cameras on OSIRIS-REx as it was approaching the asteroid. You can see this big rubble pile that this asteroid is. So it's kind of orbiting around, trying to find a good spot to touch down and grab a sample from. And then we see it descend, and then we can see the shadow in just a minute. There we go, the shadow of that grabby arm come. And then when it touches down, all of the debris that's spewed out. And then we move back away after we had our brief touchdown. So this is just really exciting. It's a really cool feat of engineering to be able to do this. It is not the first of its mission. Japan actually had a mission like this in the early 2000s, I believe, and they also just did a second one very recently. But it's the first of its kind that NASA has done. So it's still very exciting and really cool, again, feat of engineering, just to be able to fly to an asteroid and briefly touch down and grab some material and then bring it back to Earth for us to study. But that is the last of the current events that I have for us this month. Did we have any questions come through, Eli?
No, we didn't have any questions.
No? All right, well, if you do have any questions, now is a great time to ask them down below in the comments. And while we wait, just a couple of things to go over. First off, thank you to everyone who came out to our Halloween event last weekend. We are so excited for the turnout we had, and we hope that everyone who did stop by and got one of our activity kits has enjoyed exploring those activities. Let's see, coming up over the next week, on Saturday, we have our November constellation story time. So we'll go over kind of the constellations and the stars that you can find up in the month of November. Next week on Wednesday, that's when you're doing Star Wars, right? I think that's what we said.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Wednesday of next week, Eli is going to be doing Star Wars Fact or Fiction. And then next Saturday, we will be doing a tour of the solar system. So a lot of fun stuff coming up. I guess I will also say we do still have our stellar distancing t-shirts for sale if you are interested. There is a link in the video description where you can go and order one for yourself. You can either have it shipped to you for a small additional charge, or we can, if you're in the Duluth area, we can schedule a pickup time for you to come pick it up from the planetarium. And all of these proceeds are going to help us continue to do these live stream events and also help to cover funds for virtual field trips for our local schools, since they're not having a lot of budget this year for field trips and things, and we want to still be able to help out our local classes, or even because they are, oops, I clicked the wrong button. There we go. Because we're doing virtual, we could extend this to outside of our local area as well. But that's just helping us cover the funds for that. All right, anything come in?
Nope.
No? All right, well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed learning about what you can find up in your sky this month. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening and a week, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.